Okay, hello. So this is the questions for the discussion for the week. I have them written down, so you'll see me going back and forth. For the first question, we are asked Odysseus and Calypso in Book 5. How does Calypso's role demonstrate the power dynamics between the gods and mortals? And do you think Odysseus truly wanted to leave, or was he just fulfilling his duty? So the first question I answered with the power imbalance between the gods and mortals is vast. So with the gods possessing immense, often limitless power over the lives of humans who are considered fundamentally weaker, mortals are subject to the whims and interventions of the divine, leaving them with the control over their own destinies and forcing them to appease the gods through prayer and offerings to secure favor and avoid misfortune. So pretty much just saying that the gods have all this power over the mortals and that the mortals are ultimately always going to be under that of the divine, the gods. So therefore, Calypso's role demonstrates that the power dynamics between gods and mortals by luring and trapping Odysseus. The only reason that he was able to go was because of the other gods' mercy. Had it been up to Neptune and Calypso only, he would have never been able to go and would have been punished and trapped there until he died. So I believe Odysseus truly wanted to go home because he loved his family and his hometown Ithaca. I do not believe that he just wanted to fulfill his duties, because he shows true desperation and depression and longing to be with his wife and son. He left initially because of his duty and oath to Helen's husband, Menabius. Sorry, I can never say that right. So after Helen is abducted by Paris and everything that goes on with that, that's a whole different part of the story. He tried to get out of the fighting the Trojan War, but he was forced with a decision to either kill his son or to go to war, pretty much. Came down to those two, and that's the reason why he inevitably left to war in the first place. Otherwise, he would have stayed there with his family, and none of this would have taken precedence. And so for the second question, it says encounters with monsters. So this will be books 9 through 11. From Polyphemus to Circe and the land of the dead, Odysseus faces many supernatural challenges. Which encounter do you find the most significant, and what does it reveal about him as a leader? So I personally believe that Polyphemus was the most significant, just because he was Neptune's son, and it was one of the first things that he had to face on his journey back home. So he arrives to the island, and he goes up to the cave in the mountain where he sees that Polyphemus is at, like where he's living and everything. He wants to go. He wants to introduce himself, try to see what he can get from him, have a good cordial invitation into his home and see what he can get from him. And he doesn't realize until after Polyphemus tells him that he's Neptune's son. So he doesn't know that the Cyclops was gonna deny him hospitality because they were inferior to him. So he then immediately kills and eats the two men. So this makes this a bad decision on Ulysses's dictation on whether or not they should have stayed there, greeted the person, or the other men just wanted to steal some stuff and go on about their way. But he was wanting to do it the right way. Sadly, it ended up being the wrong decision because he immediately kills and eats two of his men. And this is a very brutal thing for him to come to. And then he's faced with having to pretty much fight the Cyclops to live. So he has no other choice. Unless he just doesn't want to anger the gods and die, that was his only other choice. So that's why he goes. They're battling the Cyclops because they're trying to get out. He stabs him in the eye. Then they're able to leave under the sheep. And it's Neptune who Polyphemus cries out to, his dad. and tells him, like, hey, I don't want him to make it home. I want you to torture him. I want you to make his travels difficult, because he's the god of the seas, and so he's able to control everything that Ulysses is having to go through, which I think then in turn is the reason why he finds more difficulty going home and why he finds the island of Circe, and he ends up being there for a year. Like, Neptune is literally driving him in all the wrong directions, and that's why he's ending up having to go through all these adventures just to get back home. So in the end, Odysseus' decision with the land of the Cyclops has his men on edge about arriving at any island, especially with the next being the island where Circe lives. She ends up turning them into pigs, and so they see that and they're like, this is insane, you know. But he does go and he does save his men with the help of Hermes. He gives them the antidote to her elixir, where he's then able to make a deal with her. She can't harm him. She helps his men, turns them back into humans. They're there for a year, and then they go on to their next adventure, which the men are saying it's time to go, but then they end up going to the land of the dead. And so I think that all of this led up to his initial meeting with the Cyclops, and that's why I think it's the most important. And for the third question, it's fate versus free will. How do these books develop the tension between destiny and personal choices? Do you think Odysseus controls his fate, or is he at the mercy of the gods? So the tension between fate and free will is constantly present throughout the entire reading. Odysseus is caught between the predetermined path set by the gods and his own ability to make choices that influence his journey. So though ultimately the narrative suggests that while he can navigate his own path to some extent, his fate is largely controlled by the gods, meaning that he is not fully in control of his own destiny. So I do believe that he is at the mercy of the gods. And that's everything. Thank you.